a new Sicha, a new Chelek of base in the Likktei Sichos. This is again a project of the project Likktei Sichos. And let us begin. Page 1, again in Chelek of base. Steht im Medrash, Omer Rav Asi, Mipnei ma maschilin l'tinekes b'teras kainim, ve'ein maschilin b'breishis. Rav Asi asked, why is it that the young children begin learning Torah with Teras Kainim, which Teras Kainim is the book of Vayikrah, and not the book of Bereshis? When a child starts to speak, we teach him Psukim of Vayikrah, and the question is, the Medrash asks, why Vayikrah not Bereshis from the beginning of the Torah? Ella, he says, Shatinekes Tahedin, the young children are pure, Akarbonis Tahedin, and the sacrifices are pure. Yovayu Tahedin, Visasku b'Tahedin. Let the pure ones come and occupy themselves with the pure one. So Rav Asi says simple. Since Vayikrah speaks about karbonis, which are pure, and since children are pure, let pure children start learning about pure subjects. What's meant by karbonis Tahedin? Now, the question is, what is meant by the statement that the karbonis, the sacrifices, are pure? So, Atel Mefarshim Zagin, some Mefarshim want to say, as this meant, as karbonis darfen gebracht werden b'tahara. Some Mefarshim want to say that the some Mefarshim want to say that when you say the karbonis tahedin, that the karbonis has to be brought in a state of purity, nit betuma, rather than in impurity. Other commentaries say, as durch karbonis wird men tor von chet. Through karbonis, one becomes pure from sin. So that's how some Mefarshim want to explain what the tahiris are. Some Mefarshim want to say that this is that it's Chaim. He wants to say that karbonis tahirin means that the karbonis has to be brought b'tahara and not b'tumah. Other Mefarshim want to say, listen, in the Kli Yakar, they want to say that through karbonis, one becomes tar from the chet. Now the Rebbe says, beide perushim zan abren d'cher nit glatik. Both interpretations are not so satisfactory. For Loshen ha-medrash b'ha karbonis tahedin, if you're medayik in the Teres Kainim, what does it say? It says, the sacrifices are pure. Is mashvim ma'azdoret min vegin the karbonis atzmum as ze zayin tahedin, und nit vegin di was bringing ze. So if you're medayik in the medrash, it says that the sacrifices are pure, which implies that the kavan is that the karbonis themselves are pure, and not those who bring them must either be pure or become pure. In other words, the way the Mefarshim explains about the karbonis tahedin, it's mashma that through bringing a carbon, either you become, that when you bring a carbon, you have to be tar, or through bringing a carbon, one becomes tar. But the Medrash says clearly that the karbonis tahedin, which implies that we're speaking about the karbonis themselves, not the ones that must bring the carbon or become pure by bringing them. Umeidach, on the other hand, let him pshutim k'mashmo, interpreting things as is, as tahedin batzitzich oiv di karbonis atzmum, that the term tahedin, the pure ones, refer to the karbonis themselves. Also, it's also problematic. Men gefindet as Teda so by karbonis nutzen die hagdara von tahedin. We don't find that the Teda uses the category of tahedin. And gefit as karbonis darf sein tmimim umevchorim, or in it together from tahedin, we find that karbonis have to be unblemished, they have to be good quality. We don't find a category ever, not in Torah, that karbonis have to be tahedin. What's this lashon of karbonis tahedin? Base. L'cheira, well, you can't learn in. So on the surface, it's possible to explain as the getter from tahedin, in Medrash is mas in the mit was Chazal Zagen wegen die karbonis von lifnei matan Torah. So you could say in the this is based on what the Medrash categorizes karbonis as pure, according to what Chazal say concerning karbonis offered before Matan Torah. As akur ksherin the korev behema chayav oiv schorim and the keves tmimim or balimum tahedin awolei tmim. It says that all animals were fit to be karbonis: a domesticated animal, an undomesticated animal, a bird, a male, a female, unblemished and blemished animals. Thus says, but all the karbonis were brought from species that were pure, in other words, kosher, but leitmeim, but not impure species. Thus says, as a gather from karbonis far Matan Torah is tahedin. So before the giving of the Torah, karbonis were categorized as pure. That's what it says. That's what the Chazal say. It's brought down in Gemara Zvachim that by karbonis before Matan Torah, everybody was kosher to bring behemoths, everything sayachaya, oiv, skorim, and kevis, tamimu, balimumin, but they had to be for kosher animals. So that's the gather of karbonis before Matan Torah. You had to bring tahir, and you had to bring kosher animals. When the shaykhs from karbonis far Matan Torah l'nyanenu in them, the connection between the karbonis before the giving of the Torah l'nyanenu is in them. So what's the connection? She says, that here we're speaking about children. Ketanim was anit b'chuyiv in karbonis. Here we're speaking about tinekes, which are not obligated in karbonis. As bedugma to the karbonis from far Matan Torah, vens is noch nit given ki mitzvah b'chiyuv of karbonis. So we're speaking about children that are not mechuyiv in karbonis, and that's very similar to karbonis before Matan Torah, that there was no obligation to give it. Let's turn over the page 2. So the Rabbi says, "Ober das is kosher." However, this explanation is also it's questionable. The Medrash is the masber dem tam was masachilin litinekes with teras kainim. The Medrash is explaining the reason that young children begin teras kainim. Was anhalt the dinim from karbonis for noch Matan Torah, which contains the laws pertaining to karbonis brought after the giving of the Torah. Is vi pasta the farglayis from ketanim to karbonis shlefnei Torah. So based on this, the comparison of children to karbonis brought before the giving of the Torah doesn't appear to be appropriate, because the Medrash is speaking, the Torah's Kenim is speaking about dinim of karbonis after Matan Torah. That's what Vayikrah speaks about, all the halachas of karbonis after Matan Torah. So what we said basically in Beis, we tried to bring a answer that what does it mean tahedin, that the gather of tahedin is what Chazal say, that before Matan Torah the karbonis have to be tahedin, they have to be kosher, and the connection is between the karbonis before Matan Torah and children, that just like children are mechuyev in karbonis, this is connected with the fact that before Matan Torah there was no obligation to give to bring karbonis. But the Rebbe says that if you look in the, what does it say? Maschilin tinekes bit teras kainim, which means we start the halachas of karbonis, children learn karbonis of which are karbonis which a person is mechuyev to bring. That's the whole sefer of Vayikrah is all speaking about karbonis. Okay, Gimel. He says like this: "In Tanchuma werd gebracht der über der Monte Maimer, und wir haben schon gesagt steht." So in the Medrash, it brings the same teaching, and then it proceeds as follows: "Lefikach ani maila aleim kilo hem oimdim makrivim lefnei karbonis." So he says, therefore, Hashem says, I consider it as if they are standing and offering karbonis before me. So he says like this: the Mishnah says, I consider it as if they are standing and offering karbonis before me. Let it be known to you that although the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed and the karbonis are no longer practiced, were it not for the young children who recite the karbonis, the order of karbonis, the world would not be around. That's what the Medrash says. It brings this down, and then it says that that I consider those. I consider that they're standing and bringing karbonis before me, and even though the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed, if not for the Tinekis that are reading Seder Karbonis, the world would not be around. So the Rebbe says like this: "Is Temua, it's wondrous. The Medrash Tanchuma Alein is the Noch Mamshich. If you look at the Medrash Tanchuma, it says the Fikach Amar Hakadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael Bonai Im Atem Boiskim Parshas Karbonis Ma'ila Ani Aleichem Ki Atem Makrivim Korban. As jeder was es ist über Parshas Karbonis, nicht nur Tinekis, es Ma'ila Ani Olav, Hilu is Makriva Korban Bepel. Is wie steht das mit dem, was der Medrash, wie stimmt das mit dem, was der Medrash sagt, früher, als Ilui hat Tinekis Dafke, Shekerim Beseder Karbonis, So now the question is like this. The Medrash says that the Eibishter says, my children, if you involve yourself with karbonis, I will consider it as if you're offering karbonis, and implies that not only children, but also any Yid who occupies himself with learning about karbonis, he's considered as if he actually brought karbonis. So l'chayra, we said before from the Medrash that it teaches us that young children specifically learn karbonis, and it says, where if not for the children, then the world would fall apart. The Rebbe says, was Mzagin, so therefore you have to say, as in uftu from kilu makrivin karbon, at this, that we say that both adults and children who study the halachas of karbonis are considered to have offered karbonis. So he says, the Amayla v'yusrin tinekas b'teres kainin l'gabidim nimud from kol. There's still like a virtue of advantage, the study of teres kainin by young children, that surpasses the study of all other people. Dafke by zeh tut sich das oif in ashlemis te keifen. That specifically through children that was far zichert as the elam. So it's dafke through the children, specifically through the children, that they enable the world to be maintained. So there's everybody else, adults, that when they read about karbonis, it's like ki'ilu makrivin carbon, but there's a special advantage by children that when the children read karbonis, they maintain the world. Okay, Dalit. So he says like this: that man das verstehen, in dem über dem Maimer Chazal. Well, we'll understand this by first clarifying what the above mentioned from Chazal. As far by an Teda hat man gekannt Makrivs and Karbonis von allen Minim zu Hedem. Was das lernt man ab von Neach, bei wem man nicht stehen, wie Kola Beima zu Hedem. That we'll understand this by first prefacing what we said, that before the giving of the Teda, it was possible to offer all Karbonis, but they had to be kosher species. Now, where do we learn this out from? We learn this out from what the Torah describes by Neach, Mikol HaBehema Teheda, from all pure animals. Fret if them the Gemara, so now the Gemara in Zvachim questions the statement that says, Omi havu tmeinu tehedem bahi shaita. So the Gemara asks, were there pure and impure species at that time? In other words, the Torah wasn't given yet. So what does it mean you have to bring kosher? The whole idea of kosher wasn't really around before the giving of the Torah. When the Gemara is masber as the inyan from tehedem damald is given ma'oisen shasidim l'tor. So the Gemara answers that when we say tahirin, we're speaking about species that would ultimately be categorized as pure. As Rashi, as the Gemara says, and Rashi in his commentary on the Torah explains. So when we say tahirin, we're saying that species that eventually become kosher by the giving of the Torah. This means, as in the karbonis for Neach Farman Torah is given adavar v'yifuchi. So this teaches us that before the giving of the Torah, you have like a little bit of a paradox. On one hand, the karbonis was Neach hat gebracht seinen nicht given an inyan for kiyum mitzvah. On one hand, the karbonis that Neach brought did not involve in the observance of a mitzvah. Also, we don't find that Neach B'chal kept mitzvahs or kept Kol Torah Kula before it was given. Es ist given al derech wie man gefindt in alle Zeit, den euch farmad der Torah, als Bnei Adam und Adam Asmi haben gebracht Karbonis to Hashem, it's as their eigenem hergish to live verschiedene Sibis. This is just like karbonis resemble that would regularly be brought even before Matan Torah. People, for various reasons, besides by Adam, they felt very motivated by their own feelings to bring karbonis to Hashem. On the other hand, since Neach offered only animals that would in the future be categorized as pure, is from them gufum muchach. So this indicates that as das was by Neach is not given kin chiluk zwischen memes teres tmes. Kushas hagemoro mi have it tmein uterin by ishaita. Is das nur bei negela chiluk etzebeza, aber the havdalah from terin and tmein Hashem asid is Hashem ba'im given. So even though there was no distinction between kosher animals and impure, as the Gemara asks, were there b'chlal pure and impure species at that time. However, this only applies in regards to a person when he ate. But the fundamental distinction between species that would ultimately be defined as pure, kosher, that would be defined as already when it was already by Neach already in existed. So it comes out as for Neach is Shengiven Aschala Gidratera. So it comes out that Neach, and from Neach's time, this distinction by the Torah already begun. As is given Koidim Man Torah, even though he was before Man Torah, Nachman even more so. He was before even the Obis. Was there Anogas given all the Elvin Man Torah, Kim Kol Torah Kulash Nitno, my time Mota Gebrata Korban Dafko from Torah, Shasin Litor. So it comes out that Neach, in one way, he had like the gather of after Man Torah, which what did Neach do? One thing that he did that resembled after Man Torah, the gather of after Man Torah, that was the karbonis that he brought, because he brought karbonis that were tar, ma'ois and shasin litor. So since we find that the distinction of Neach was only in regards to karbonis, Shloimy as das is der far weil dafke der inyan from karbonis is bei from yuchas shaykh is edermat bakum to Torah, because this teaches us that you see that even Neach, he brought karbonis to Hayden even before the giving of the Torah, because karbonis has a relevance even before the giving of the Torah. Okay, okay, so yesterday we started a Sicha, which was printed in Chelech of Beis. It's the first Sicha, page 1. And the Rabbi brought a medrash, Amar Vasi, why does, when a child starts to speak, we teach him the Parshas of Vayikrah, Teres Kenim? Why don't we teach the Parsha of Bereshis, start at the beginning of the Torah? So he says that a child is pure, children are pure, karbonis are pure, so let pure children learn about the pure karbonis. So the Mefarshim explain, what does it mean, karbonis tahirin? What's this expression, karbonis are pure? So some Mefarshim want to say is that karbonis have to be brought in a state of tara. Can't be tummy when you bring a carbon. Other Mefarshim want to say that through karbonis, a person becomes tar. Now, the Rebbe says that the problem with with both Mefarshim is that the expression karbonis tahirin, it's mashma that the karbonis themselves are pure. And the way the Mefarshim explain has nothing to do with the actual karbonis. It's either the state of the person, or through karbonis, a person becomes pure. And then the Rebbe says that if you look at the other way, if you learn Parshas that tahiris go in the karbonis, we don't find anywhere in the Torah this expression of karbonis tahirin. You find that a carbon has to be pure, has to be have any blemishes. It has to be from mufchorim, but you don't find this expression of tahirim. Okay, so the Rebbe says, l'chera, you could say that when you say tahirin, it's connected to what Chazal say in Gemara and Zvachim, that in regards to the karbonis that were brought before Matan Torah, so all animals are kosher to bring as a behema, all tahiritic animals, in other words, all kosher animals, and it doesn't make a difference if it's the balei mumin, as long as it's tahirin, it's okay. Before Matan Torah, that's the type of karbonis that you were allowed to bring. Now, what's the connection between the karbonis before Matan Torah and when you get to what we're speaking about. So he says that just like Ketanim are not Mechuyev in Karbonis, which is connected to also before Manter, they weren't Mechuyev to bring Karbonis. The Rebbe says the problem with that is that the Rebbe, that the Medrash says that the Tanega should come and speak and learn about Teras Kainim, which speaks about Vayikrah, which is halachas, which are obviously when they get to after Matan Torah. It's halachas what you have to do with their karbonos. So how could you say? So based on this answer, you can't say that they're learning. It's connected with the Gemara that they're learning about karbonos before Matan Torah, because both are not mechuyev if it says in the Medrash maschilin l'tinikas b'teres kenim. Now Tanchuma brings that the above mimer, and he says that therefore I consider that those who are oimidu makriv of karbonos before me, and then he says you should know that since the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, karbonos are not brought, and if not for the children reading about karbonos, say their karbonos, the world wouldn't stand. So he says that Rebbe brought a question that it's mashma that one place it's mashma that anybody who learns about karbonos, and then it says no dafka child. So you have to say that there's a special advantage in children learning about karbonos. So in Dalal we said we'll understand this by first prefacing what we said, that before Matan Torah you could bring all types of minim tahidim. Now, where do we learn that out from? We learn that out from what Neach said, we call it Behema Tahira. So the Gemara asks over there in Zvachim, Umi Hevetmein Tahirim Ba'ishaita, there was no such a thing as kosher, non-kosher. So the Gemara explains it's that when they say Tahirin, it's Asidin Litar, that eventually they will be kosher. So which means that the karbonos that Neach brought before Matan Torah, it was a little bit a davar v'yifuchi, because the karbonos that Neach brought were not, he wasn't being mekayim a mitzvah. You find that Neach Bechlal was not mekayim kol Torah kula achalin nitna like the Avis. So and many people brought karbonos because they felt that this is the right thing to bring to Hashem. But Neach, you find that Dafka Neach was Ma'osin Shasidin L'Tor. Dafka Neach, he brought karbonos that were eventually become Tor. So you see from this that the Neach that brought the karbonos, it was a difference between Tahir and Tmein. So it comes out that Neach was basically the beginning of the bringing karbonos that had of Gidrei HaTorah. Now, even though it was before Matan Torah, so basically the point of this race is the only thing that you find that Neach did before in his time that has a shaykhs to Gidrei HaTorah is karbonos, because he brought dafka tahirim. That's what we learned yesterday. Okay. So now he says in Heya as follows. So one of the possible explanations you could say as follows. Karbonis oich von noch Matan Torah afal pi ze zan von tayag mitzvah Torah zan ze aber befulasum over mele mahusam hecher von Torah mitzvah. So even after the Torah was given and the karbonis were counted amongst the 613 mitzvahs, the fact is the effect they bring out and like the inner nature transcends the Torah and mitzvahs. And therefore, karbonos have such power; they can atone, they can compensate for the lack of deficiency in the observance of Torah and mitzvahs. So, even though karbonos is one of the Taryag mitzvahs of Torah, so the Chayr has a shaykhs to Torah, but through karbonos, what it affects is mechaper on a time that when a person lacked in the observance of Torah mitzvahs. So he says like this: Bestignan acher. You can learn this a little in a slightly different manner. The Ayid bring the korban Hashem dikter demit ois sein korban Hashem. When a Yid brings a korban to Hashem, he expresses his closeness to Hashem and the bond he shares to Him. Was erot be'etzem al Sayyid, which he has and he possesses inherently. Welche is nit tole in kima Torah mitzvahs. It's not dependent on Torah mitzvahs. The Shemi der Verbund nicht aufgetan durch Kima mit Torah mitzvahs. So just like the connection between a Yid and Hashem is not accomplished through Torah mitzvahs, also wird nicht geminder durch Heder Kima mitzvahs. So therefore, just like the bond is not achieved through the observance of Torah mitzvahs, so too it cannot diminish through the lack of observing Torah mitzvahs. The atmistische Verbund von a Yid mit den Ebersten is Hecher von Torah mitzvahs. The essential connection that a Yid has with the Eberster transcends Torah mitzvahs. This is like what the pasuk says, you are children of Hashem, your Hashem. And like from here the Gemara learns out, even though the Yid sins, they're still my children. So this is the idea of a korban. A korban is the connection that a Yid has. He wants to become close to Hashem, but just because he has this essential connection to Hashem, which is not totally on Torah mitzvahs. Okay, and das is the time for most karbonis and imchaper oif achet v'oven. And this is the reason why karbonis atone for sin and transgression. Shas a Yid is a chas v'shalom ever tzenis barich oneres pegim rachman l'tzlan. When a Yid chas v'shalom violates Hashem's will, so he creates a blemish in the Eberster. In sein, or I should say, in sein hisachtus mit in Eberster welche kum durch Torah mitzvahs. So when a Yid violates Hashem's will, he creates a blemish in like the oneness with Hashem that is established through the Torah mitzvahs. So he could fix this. So when the Beis Hamikdash stood, he can fix this through karbonis. Durch me'ir megala sein, durch hakrovas hakorban, dem atzmistika verbunden von a Yid mit den Ebersten in welches is nicht shaykh in pegam. So he could do this by arousing and revealing the essential connection he shared with Hashem, and that this can never be tarnished. Und das is mechaper wischt up der pegam von dem chete oven. And through bringing a korban, which, like we said, reveals the essential bond, this brings atonement, it washes away the blemish, and which is created by chet and oven. So basically, what we said in Hay is that karbonis, even after Mount Teda, even though they're part of the mitzvahs Teda, but they accomplish something which is higher than Teda mitzvahs. And like we say, even though a Yid sins, he's still the Eberster's child. And this is the reason why a korban can be mechaper on a chet and oven, because when a Yid sins and he's over the Eberster's ratzon, so he makes a blemish in his connection with Hashem. So he can fix this with karbonis through being ma'ir and megala, the connection, the essential connection that he has with the Eberster, which is not shaykh any pegam, and this and therefore through the karbonis it takes away the pegam. So we're saying now in Vav, listen now Vav. Al pia now kommt euch zu atesefes avona in dem ganzen hina karbonis. Based on this, we can have a new understanding of the entire concept of karbonis. Was the Cheder came in this fragen, the Cheder you can ask as follows: Wie kommt es? As a kava aveda was the Eberster hat eingestellt for Yidden, will sein durch avedes der karbonis. The surface, you could ask a question that l'chayro, how is it possible that Hashem set up that the avodah is through karbonis, through shechten a behema chuli, was he makro sein if a mizbeach through shechten a behema, bring on a mizbeach l'chayro what men masm given an avodah ruchnis l'chayro. If you want to bring out something such like a spiritual connection, you should have an avodah ruchnis. Avodah should believe tefillah ki yitzvah that there should be a special expression through davening. Was break der ist die Verbindung von Yidden mit der Likus und Ifin Golav, which this expresses the bond between a Yid and the Eberster in a more apparent manner. And the Rebbe says, befrat as karbonis an nit an inyan was is ausgeteilt noch for Yidden. Particularly, karbonis are not something which are exclusive to Jewish people. Even a non-Jew offers sacrifices, and there's times that that a goy is allowed to bring in the Beis Hamikdash a korban. So what's so special about karbonis? Why did the Eibusher Dafka choose karbonis to express the central connection that a Yid has? So he says, the pianal is this movement. So based on the above, it will be understood. And this is self-explanatory. Dafka therefore was the Skashers Atmas von Yidin mit den Eibusher. Es ist von der Skashers durch sehr Avodah b'Torah mitzvahs. So, like we're saying, the connection between a Yid and Hashem transcends any bond that can be established through the Torah mitzvahs because it stems entirely from Bechira Chavshir, from free choice. Aschosh och Esav Yaakov, even though Esav is Yaakov's brother. So l'chayda a Yid and a Goy are alike. Afal Bikenu Oyav es Yaakov. Nevertheless, what does Hashem say? I love Yaakov. High time and go for the Sichos. In other words, Mitzad Bechira Shekadosh Baruch Hu, because why are the Yidden special? Is because Dafka, the connection that they have Mitzad Bechira Chavshir, that Hashem chose them. High time and go for so for this reason, the relationship between a Yid and a Hashem is expressed specifically through the service of Karbanos. Was Bichitzeni Yusa is an ear nika dir duchnias von Yidin, because, like we said, by the when you look at Bichitzenius, it's not so recognizable that it has a ruchniistic thing with a Yid. Especially. Like we said, that even a goy could bring it. However, nevertheless, it's only a Yid's carbon that arouses the essential bond that stems from Hashem's choice. This is like parallel to Hashem's, like we say, Hashem's choice of the Yids, specifically in their body, which we know physically a Yid's body and a Goy's body resembles each other. So what we're saying in Vav, that
which what was told is that is the same. I mean, let
me just repeat it. Okay, so we're saying like this, that based on what we said till now, we can explain that a new concept of Karbanos. So the you can ask, what's so special about Karbanos? Why does Karbanos Stavki Shechting of Haim? Why is that expressed? Why not have a Aveda of Tefillah? So he says that especially Goyim also brought Karbanos. A Goy could bring a carbon in the base of Midrash. So he says that he and his sentence, that's a carbon, you don't really see anything special about the carbon b'chitzenius, but the Pnimius, we know that it expresses the inner connection between the Yid and the Eibishter. We said, Esav Yaakov, but nevertheless, Oeves Yaakov, because inside the Bechira of the Eibishter, inside the Bechira that Hashem chose in the Guf of the Yid. So this, Dafka through the Avedis Karbanos, which B'chitzenius, you don't see any difference. Dafka through that is Mo'ir, the Eibishter's connection, the central connection that Yid has with the Eibishter. What were you saying, sorry?
I just want to know the concept that never saying this, but where do we find this concept that has is the fact? He's just saying because Likktei made to like Yaakov,
so Mitzad B'chida, because the Eibishter chose the Yiddish body. Yeah, it's a lot of places. Okay, let's truck ahead to finish this session. Okay, Zion, the mitzvah when verstehen for was die Kabbalas von Neach for Man Teda, haben gerade Sheches zu der Kabbalah Schlacher Man Teda. Sie ist in sie gewähnt, der Gede von Teheten Hashem Osid. On this basis, it's possible to understand why the Kabbalas brought by Neach before the giving of the Torah relate to the Kabbalas offered afterwards. In other words, they were categorized as pure because of the future status. Thus was Neach and Matper given Kabbalas is given also Hidol Hashem, Ardem was Geratevet geworden from Mambel Vayikrah Kimas Neach. Neach offered Kabbalas as a gesture of thank you to Hashem for saving him from the flood. As it says, Vayikrah Kimas Neach, Hashem remembered Neach. Yudua, the Hezber for Wester Pasuk Vayikrah Kimas Neach is einer from the Pesuki Zichrenes was wearing gesagt in Musa Rosh Hashanah. The say says the Vayikrah Kimas Neach at Akesher Natel from Yal Zichrenechem Fana Lateva. So this pasuk is is included in the Zichrenes that you mentioned in Musaf on Rosh Hashanah. It's connected to the remembrance of you, in other words, the Jewish people coming before me in a positive light. Because the reason that we mention this is because the Hashem remember Neach is because of the essential virtue of the Neshamis Yisrael. Was der Far Zoknin begamas Neach be'ava zacharta. That's why we say in the bracha we say you recall Neach with love. Was mean the Abba Pnimis v'Asmis, which means the inner love existing between Hashem and the Yidden, which we know was higher than anything. Kumte, so comes out, as Chotch Nech is given for Man Torah, was Damalt is given one of Chatim Kolam V'Loshin. So it comes out that even though the Nech lived before Man Torah, before the time that Hashem chose the Yidden from all the other nations, and Afilu needed an Eifim from the Ovis. As Mitzvah is given the Aschol from Am Yisrael Kishmam Ovis, and he didn't even have the relationship that the Ovis had, which the Ovis had a much stronger relationship than Nech. Nevertheless, Nech had a connection to the souls of the Jewish people, which defines by Nech given as a result of the connection, because of the essential virtue of the neshamas of the Yidden, Hashem recalled Nech with love. When the Mitzvah is moving for us, the Kabbanis was Nech had gebracht beim Schaft zu der Schire Veido far sein Nitzel werden von Mabel und man got a Shachas the Kabbanis for Yidden lacher Man Torah. On this basis, we can understand why the Kabbanis Nech offered is behemshich to the Schira of him saving him from the flood, and it's related to the Kabbanis that Eden brought after the giving of the Torah. And thus is the beer and them was the Medrash zogt wegen the Kabbanis from Teres Kenim. This also explains what we said. The Medrash says, the Kabbanis Tehedin, the Kabbanis that are Tor. Was Tehedin is Agdor and Kabbanis from Farman Torah. When we say Kabbanis are Tehedin, we're speaking about Kabbanis brought even before the giving of the Torah, as we explained before. About the Techim Primi for Kabbanis is, since the theme of Kabbanis is, so Megal and the Ava Atmi Shalkalish Baruch Hu was his hecher from the Ava Shaidei Torah. What's the idea of the Kabbanis? Is to reveal the essential love that Hashem has for the Jewish people, which transcends his love as a result of Torah. Drik das sich eis mehr in the Kabbanis shall nech von lifnei Man Torah. So this essential love was expressed to a greater degree through the Kabbanis brought by Nech before the giving of the Torah. Even before the commandment of the Kabbanis. However, after the Man Torah, the Kabbanis is a mitzvah, and as a result, it's not so recognizable that how the Kabbanis after Man Torah are basically higher than Torah. So the reason, and as I explained in Ches, that we see that the Kabbanis before Man Torah, Dafke there, they express the essential love that the Eibishter had to Nech and how the Eibishter has to Yidden. Ches. Api Hakal now. Should just do this tomorrow, so. Okay, till we get stopped. Api Kol now, but when it verstehen, was the Medrash of masculine to Nikas V'deres Kenim, Val Yovei to Edim Yisaska with Hidden. On this basis, you can understand why the Medrash says that young children should be given the Torah studies and Torah Kenim. Why? Because we say the pure ones come and involve themselves with pure matters. There's 3 periods that are negate to the Yidden. Number 1 is in Man Torah, when Yidden have Mekabel Mekayim given Torah mitzvahs al pi tzivah Hashem. So you have the period of the giving of the Torah where the Yidden accepted the Torah mitzvahs, observing them as a tzivah Hashem. Based on even from the Ovis was Kimu Kol Torah Kula actually Nitin. And then you have the period at the Ovis who observe the entire Torah. And Gimel, or nach free, and even before so, for Neach by Vemis is given Noach Shaychas to Torah, and then you have the period beginning with Neach, who shared a connection to the Torah, Agaponim Ageder from Tumah V'Tara. He didn't learn Torah, but he had a Shaychas to Torah, at least in regards to the concept of Tumah and Tara, purity and impurity. Shloimy, so the Rabbi says, as the Dugmasa from the Direct Kufis is dubbed by Yed and Yidden. These 3 examples, these 3 periods also exist in every Yid's personal life. Beis, Aleph. Nachdem wie wird bas mitzvah von Mechib mitzvahs. So after either a bar bas mitzvah age, is obligated to observe mitzvahs. Beis, von sind igile chinuch and sein prima ter mitzvahs since al tachonus was mal chiyuv wasam chiyuv. And then you have the time that a child reaches in educated age, when the observance of ter mitzvahs serves as a preparation for the time when they are obligated to do so. And then Gimel, when there is noch nicht shaykh, and noch v'kim ter mitzvahs, aber after became wie bald as a Yiddish kind, hat euch demol da shaykhs zu Torah. Sehr mir sehr, is gegeben geworden zu Torah, der Yerushalayim Rashi Kedushakim was reich tinik shel ben yemi is shakol and hat da shaykhs zu Gidrei HaTorah. So then you have before the child reaches an age, when the child has no association with the actual observance of mitzvahs, nevertheless, since he's a Yiddish child, even when he or she shares a connection to Torah, And we know the Torah is a Yerusha, it's inheritance, as it says, the inheritance of Yaakov. And even we know an infant, a day old, can inherit. So we see that he or she shares a connection with the parameters by Torah. Vivalas by Yakotan, Kodim Shigila Chinuch is Nochnik Toder Inyan Aveda B'Torah Mitzvahs, as Ve'im Defar Nikar Begila is and Maila Atmis Al Sayidishakin. So before a child reaches an age, the concept of Aveda Torah Mitzvahs, so the essential character that a child possesses is basically more evident by Yiddishakin. The Ava Primis Vatmis von Ebersten Tzidin Mer Begila by Yiddishakin Kedim Shigila Chinuch. Okay, I guess we'll stop here. Tomorrow morning we'll finish this. Okay, let's continue. We got in the middle of Ches, and then we had to stop, so we'll start again with Ches. I'll pick on now, but when ich verstehen, was der Medrash sagt, Maschilun Tinekes B'Teras Kenim, while Yoboyu Teherin, V'Yisasku B'Teherin. Based on this, we can understand why the Medrash says that the young children should begin their learning in Teras Kenim, the book of Vayikrah, which describes Karbonis, so that the pure ones come and involve themselves with pure matters. These three periods that we spoke about, the period of, we said that by Neach and then by Avram and then after Mount Torah. So he says that the Rebbe says that these three periods apply to every Yid. Aleph, Zin Man Torah, when Yidden haben the Kabel gewen und Mekayim gewen Torah Mitzvahs al Pi Tzivah Hashem. So you have the period following the giving of the Torah, where the Yidden accept the Torah Mitzvahs according to the Tzivah of Hashem. Beis, Anhavidik for the Ovis, was Kimu Kol Torah Kula Ashlenetna, which is when the Ovis started, and Gimel, noch frier for Neach, by Vemes is given, Nor Ashaychus to Torah, Al Kolponim Ageder from Tumah B'Torah. And then you have the period of Neach, who shared a connection to Torah, at least in the concept of Tumah and Torah. The Rabbi says, Shloimy, as du Gmosov, when the Dreit Kofis is by Yed Yidden. Okay, so this is where we started yesterday. That this parallels the three periods that exist by every Yid. Aleph, Nochtem v'yervert bar bas mitzvah una mechoyim b'mitzvahs. Number one, after the child reaches either bar bas mitzvah, and he's obligated in mitzvahs. Beis, von Zint, zigier lechinuch, und sein Kima HaTorah mitzvahs is als hachonis is man chiyuvim. And then you have from the time that a child reaches a chinuch age, when the observance of mitzvahs is like a preparation for the time when they become obligated. And Gimel noch kedem shigila chinuch, when it says noch nit shayach di hanaga von kiyum HaTorah mitzvahs. And then you have even before a child reaches chinuch age, when the child has absolutely no association with Torah mitzvahs. Over Alpha became, nevertheless, that is a Yiddish kind. But der Urich Demol, das Sheiches to Torah. So, nevertheless, since he's a Jewish child, so he shares a connection to the Torah. But you say him even more so. Even more so, we're saying that the Ayid, Moshe commanded us, is an inheritance for every Yid, and as we know, the din is that even an infant of the day old inherits everything his father left. And he shares a connection with Torah. And since by a cotton, before he turns to chinuch, he doesn't have the concept of avoid and Torah mitzvahs. So the essential character that a child possesses is basically, where do you see in Begilei, is the Maila that he has this essential connection. The Alva Primius or Atmis von Ebersten Süden is mer Begilei by a Yiddish kind keinem Shkinach. So you see this essential love that which Hashem loves every Yid, it's revealed to a greater extent by a Jewish child who did not yet reach the age of chinuch. That's why you see children are much more pure. Why are children more pure? The seichel is not developed, and they have more of a connection with Atzmis. But they have the essence of Hashem. Und das is was the Medrash sagt, Yovayu Teherim, Yisaska B'Teherim. And this is what the Medrash says, that the pure ones come and involve themselves with pure matters. For Eberstein Sieden wat is herrscher von der Avashaidim that Teda, was mitzad der Abba wird aufgetan die Kapara. So since the idea of Karbonis is to reveal the essential love that a Yid has to the Eberster, and this love is higher than the love which is attained, which stems from Teda mitzvahs, and that's why this Abba is able to accomplish a Kapara, an atonement. Sie sind Teheden beetzen, weil sie der Leint and on earth with the inatuma kumnitzu. So they are essentially pure ones. They're pure, and they reach a place which the tumah doesn't come to. They're done. Their father is the enemy sasku potato. That's why the Medrash says that let the pure ones who are as adi saskus in Tahirim soll sein durch jüdische Kinder wachazan Tahirim. So this involvement with Tahirim, in other words, with Karbonis, because what do we say? What's Karbonis? Karbonis shows the essential connection that Yid has with the Eberster. So let the sisaskus of Tahirim should be through kids who are Tahirim. We attach us up in Tanchuma, Einim Yidim, Ma'u Tam Tam Chit Vavin. As the excuse me, incorrect. Thank you. And that's it. That the Medrash, like the Tanchuma says, that children don't even know the taste of sin or transgression. The Parshas by Zeh is mere Vayikrah da'ava atzmis von Eberstein Sidin, because the essential bond of a love between Hashem and the Jewish people shines forth within them much more in an apparent manner than an adult. So that's what it means. The idea of Karbonis expresses Hashem's essential love for the Jewish people, and this love transcends the love stemming from Teda mitzvahs. And because of the inner love that the Karbonis bring about, kapara. So the Karbonis are intrinsically pure. Why? Because they relate to a level of Hashem that entirely transcends the concept of Tuma and Tara. So therefore, it's appropriate that it be studied by pure ones, children who are intrinsically pure, having no connection with Tuma, and let them come and learn about Karbonis, which also transcends any Tumah. So in other words, it's very befitting. A child's connection is mer begulei ba'atzmis by a child, and the idea of Karbonis is higher than, is an essential connection. That's why it's able to be mechaper sins. Okay, Tess. Die based on what we explained, is understood why specifically the pure ones who involve themselves in pure matters, the young children who study Teres Kainim, that we said enables the world's existence to be maintained. So we asked that it's mashma that every single person who learns about Karbonis, he also, it's like he's Mekayim Kolat Elam, or so he's Mekayim, the whole world exists for him. And then we're saying, no, it's Dafka special by the children. So he says that das was the Gedelim and Isig and Parshas Karbonim is doch nit am Meisen. So when adults involve themselves with Karbonis, concerning Karbonis, they don't perform any action, nor blazei saskus b'machshava v'dibur. Their involvement is merely in thought and speech. Without the Rebbe is masber as machshava zay tefila, haveda shebalev shekeneged Karbonis v'dibur v'talmatzeder Karbonis. As the Alter Rebbe explains, that the Alter Rebbe says a person is obligated to observe all the mitzvahs and machshava dibur and meiser. So he says like this: with regards to Karbonis, thought corresponds to davening, which is the service of the heart, which parallels offering the Karbonis, and speech corresponds to Torah study concerning the Karbonis. Was die zwei Levushim from Machshava Dibur is Iker Yanim zum Megala Zainem Seichel Adam Others and Shemidus. So the purpose of these two garments of the soul, which is thought and speech, so they primarily reveal a person's thinking process for his feelings or emotions. And Zay is that Iker Nit the Asis. Velchazan and Malbish dem Seichel Other than Magmida. Dem Seichel Oimida Velchazan Ongetan in the Asis. So So like this, he's saying that even though the machshava involve letters that are clothed in thought or feelings, so he says like the letters are not primary importance. What the fundamental is the thought or the feeling that is enclosed in them. So since it's the person's own thought and feelings that are being revealed, so the essential virtue of the Yid that stems from so this virtue that a Yid has that stems from Hashem's choice of the Yid is not so evident when it comes to thinking about karbonas, speaking about karbonas. It's not so evident. So, when a child, when children read and study Teres Kainim, and then specifically, they start learning about Teres Kainim. When sie zijn noch Kelim shegilach enough, und bei sie ist nicht da, der Inyan shall havana basara. Here we're speaking about children that before they reach the capable age of understanding what mitzvahs are. So, if he means that the minig Yisrael, as boys the askals a limit from Tinikas is from Sefer Vayikrah, but enough, then the Seder Achik, and you see this at the Jewish custom that young children only begin learning parts of Seder Vayikrah, a few psukim. Afterwards, they study, Bereshis, Neach, these easier Parshas. What says by Zay, Blois and Inishal Kriya Lechut, also it's only merely a reading. The Iker Deba is neither Teichen Adibur nor the Akimas Vasayim Shalaktanim. The main thing is not that the child should understand, because he doesn't understand. Rather, it's the movement of the lips. Dafki das ruft aris megal the atzmis von Eberstein. This evokes the essential love of Hashem. Al derech hanal siv vov as praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is in Gufa Dafka, that we explained that it's Hashem who focuses on the body, chose the body read. So it's Dafka through a child that he's able to maintain the world existence. So basically, we asked the question, why is it that a child, why do we start with the child, Teres Kainim, why Dafka Vayikrah, why not in the beginning of Bereshis? And he explained that this is the idea of Yavayah Tehrin, V'Yisaska B'Tehrin, because what's the idea of a carbon? The idea of a carbon is it transcends any understanding. It's Megala, the essential love that a Yid has to the Eibishter, or I should say the essential bond. A child also, right when he starts to speak, he has no Havana Vasaga. So the only thing he really has, the only thing that the child has with the Eibishter is an essential bond. So we start with Karbonis, just Akimas Vasayim, just movements of the lips, because it's an essential bond connecting with an essential bond, and therefore they parallel one to another.